It's time to tackle the Melon Man's list of official 10s ranging from the 1960s to today. 32 is the number of official 10s I could find, so that's the number we're going with. We're going to rank and review each album from worst to best, 32 to 31, but let it be known that I don't think a single album on this list is bad. At the end of each mini review, I'll give you my official rating of the album on a scale from 0 to 10. You're definitely going to disagree with me. Full disclaimer, there are 3 albums on this list that are exempt. One I have a valid reason for, the other, not so much. But let's hop in. This album is exempt due to Alexis Marshall's behavior. What was once a harrowing record that left lasting impressions is now just too difficult to listen to. This is our jazz section, so I don't really listen to jazz, nor do I enjoy it all that much, but that doesn't take away from the talent of Miles Davis and Mingus and others involved on both of their records. I just don't feel comfortable reviewing either of them without knowing too much about the genre, so they remain at the bottom of the list for now. First things first, this album is 2 hours long. After my first listen, I didn't want to listen to it again. It's not the worst thing I've ever heard, I just don't really understand it in the same way I kind of felt about the jazz records, just to a deeper extent. Maybe this is one I should have left off too, but ultimately I decided to leave it on here. There are elements of it that I like, I think it's very raw and I can appreciate that. I just don't see a reason I'd ever want to go back. I can handle distortion and feedback, but it just felt so sporadic and random in this album. I felt exhausted after I listened to it. Maybe that's the point? Help me out here, guys. This album is the epitome of quirky. Based off the first song alone, I weirdly feel like it influenced a lot of video game soundtracks. Most of it is really weird, kinda silly. I don't really know what else to say about it. I like it, but I probably won't come back. This is a favorite amongst internet music listeners, but I have to admit it took some time to grow on me. Post-rock has never been a genre favorite of mine, but I do love shoegaze and noise, so the appeal has always been there. While this record isn't a favorite for me by any means, I can't deny the beauty of the nostalgic instrumentation throughout. The beginning of Storm and the second half of Sleep is some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard, but to be honest, apart from that, I don't love most of this album. Violator is a solid album, but I can't help but feel like it's here based off its influence alone. Depeche Mode does a great job capturing that evil sound, and they were some of the first to deliver this dark synthwave style, but there are definitely some songs on here that haven't aged the best. The opener, World in My Eyes, is a good example of that. Personal Jesus also kind of has that Ford F-150 commercial problem where it just sounds like it's trying a little too hard. Although maybe that's not the fault of the song and the fault of countless Ford F-150 commercials with dad rock music. Everything else on here though is pretty great. Halo is fantastic, Enjoy the Silence is probably the best song on the album for me, and Sweetest Perfection is pretty cool too. Solid album, but not my favorite. Oh boy, I might get crucified for this one. Alright, so Prince's style both aesthetically and musically was very unique for its time, but I don't think the music on this record is particularly noteworthy. The back half of this album is significantly better than the front, and I feel a way deeper emotional impact on When Doves Cry to Purple Rain than I do from Let's Go Crazy to Darling Nikki. I might need more listens to fully understand this one, but for now I'm left thinking this gets more praise for Prince's influence in character than the actual music. Kids See Ghosts is an album that has great production and quirks, but it's grown off me probably harder than any other album on this list. Reborn is still an amazing song, but it's lost a little bit of meaning for me due to Kanye's antics. Cuddy Montage is still incredible, and everything else I enjoy, but I can't rate this album any higher than sweetness down in my soul. Nina Simone Sings the Blues is such a classy record. I put it on while I was cooking and it just fit the vibe perfectly. To this day, I don't think I've ever heard anyone even come close to sounding like her. There's storytelling on here, there's ballads, there's love songs. This album kind of just has a little something for everyone. I don't really listen to music like this super often, but I found myself enjoying most of it.
Now they got me in the cell 'cause my records they sell 'cause a brother like me said, well.
Political hip hop in 1988, this record came out just 2 months before Straight Outta Compton, and I question if it would be a lot more popular had that album not overshadowed it. 1980s hip hop was rough. Many of the beats sounded exactly the same, and it was borderline impossible to distinguish one rapper from another. It Takes a Nation takes every 80s rap stereotype and kicks it to the side. The lyrics are politically charged, it's super energetic, and for the time the production is pretty good. This record was the blueprint for a lot of albums I probably like better, but it's still really good and deserves credit for the influence it had. I really enjoyed It Takes a Nation, but it's probably not something I'll return to very often. What Lauryn Hill accomplished as a female in hip-hop at the time is incredible, and she helped pave the way for so many other artists. With the Miseducation, you get a fantastic picture of who Lauryn Hill is, how she grew up, and what her values are. There are countless classics on this record, but the album starts with arguably its 4 best songs, then never really reaches those highs again, save for the Frankie Valli cover towards the end, which is just fantastic. Charli was able to do something here that many pop artists fail to achieve. Not only did she craft a collection of catchy electronic pop songs, she started a cultural phenomenon that lasted the entire summer of 2024 and will continue to have an impact deep in the future. Very rarely do mainstream pop albums take big risks and remain in the limelight, but Brat is the exception. Behind the Walls of Materialism and Ego is a deeply emotional record that delivers surprises at every turn. Brat is a pop juggernaut that will have staying power for a very long time. While The Turning Wheel may not be for everyone, no one could argue that the production is stellar as Spelling takes you into her weird, enchanted Alice in Wonderland-esque world. Boys at School is the obvious standout here with insane chord progressions and build-up. The synths that appear around the 2-minute mark will always give me chills. While I enjoy the rest of this record, I do feel like it peaks a bit here. That could just be a testament to how great Boys at School is, but I feel the quality of the last few tracks can't match the greatness you find on songs 1 through 7. Regardless, a small drop-off in quality can't bring down the brilliance of this album.
Wake up! Rush and put a little makeup. I just have to fade away this hiccup.
Toxicity is so far ahead of the counterparts of its time. While most metal albums of the early 2000s sound very dated now, Toxicity doesn't have that problem at all. In fact, Toxicity sounds like it could have came out yesterday. It's a record I've been meaning to listen to for a long time, but I didn't get around to doing so till making this video. I'm shocked that Serge's lyrics still fit with today's political climate over 20 years later. Some songs sound a little samey to me, but that could just be because I'm not the biggest metal listener. Overall, Toxicity is way ahead of its time, has plenty of bangers, and is easily the best metal album of its era. Nevermind is a record that changed rock forever. We went from an explosion of soft rock in the 70s to an overflow of hair bands in the 80s, and finally the 90s gave us grunge. Nevermind is a record that has sprung about so many subgenres and was really a gateway album for so many 90s indie bands. While the album is one of the most important of all time, the record itself is kinda just really good. Smells Like Teen Spirit is easily a top 50 song of all time, Come As You Are isn't far behind it, and Lithium is an absolute jam. I feel, however, that a few of the songs on the back half, like Stay Away, are just kinda okay. London Calling is a really fun album. I was expecting a very punky record, and there's some element of that here, but the way the Clash balances that with sugary, easy to digest hooks and rhythms really makes this record special. It's pretty impressive just how many genres they slid into this album: punk, classic rock, ska, and a whole lot more. The album is full of songs I adore like Spanish Bombs and Lost in the Supermarket, but there are also quite a few I can't name just because I didn't like them as much. It's a record with very high highs and few lows that aren't low enough to hold it back from being great.
There's far too many of you die.
I don't have much to say about what's going on except that its chord progressions are beautiful, the topics Marvin addresses are very raw and honest for the time, and it's easy to see why Marvin is looked at as one of the all-time greats in R&B. I think my only complaint with this album is that so many records that came after it sound like a copy and paste version of it. That can't strip what's going on of its charm though, and if anything, it's a reason why this record is so impressive. The Beatles are a weird phenomenon for me. Some things they do annoy me to an extreme level. At the same time, I give them immense respect for their influence on rock music. Songs like Maxwell's Silver Hammer and Octopus's Garden I can't stand. They feel like kids' cartoon songs. But for every song like that, you get a beautiful one like Here Comes the Sun. With that said, I understand that most of the other albums on this list don't exist without Abbey Road, and I like pretty much everything else on it. I was really loving this album till I got rear-ended by a lady who might have been drunk. I'm not kidding. It was right after the line about the naked man. Needless to say, I was so invested in Dylan's songwriting that I didn't even know what happened for a minute or two. There are a lot of critics out there regarding Dylan's voice, but it doesn't bother me at all. I really love the instrumental backdrops he chooses too. Soft pianos and organs are the perfect match for his gruffy vocals. This is an album I'm definitely going to return to later. One of the many things I love about Björk is her ability to create a new image and sound with every album. It's something few artists do, but the ones that do it really well tend to have long, successful careers. And Björk is one of the artists that does it almost effortlessly. Vespertine is a gorgeous record that feels like you're in a deep sleep, and each song is a wintry lullaby. You of course have your epic prog pop cuts like Pagan Poetry, but you also have very soft, beautiful ballads like Cocoon. Like most Björk records, you feel taken to a different dimension. Vespertine has gorgeous vocals and production and does pretty much everything right. It might be my favorite Björk album, but if not, it's very close. I've never listened to much Metallica apart from their hits, but it's pretty cool to go back and see what made them famous. The guitar playing on this album is some of the best you'll ever hear, and for being released in 1986, it's way ahead of its time. This definitely sounds like it would have come out post-90s. Kicking off with Battery and the title track is a crazy 1-2 punch, and the album never slows down from there.
Villain get the money like curls, they just trying to get a nut like squirrels.
MF Doom really solidified his legacy with this album. Accordion is one of the riskiest openers you'll ever hear, Raid has a crazy sample, and Fancy Clown is one of the funniest, most creative, artistic twists you'll ever hear. Madlib's production takes crazy risks that pay off at nearly every turn, and while I may enjoy Food just a little more, Mad Villainy is worthy of classic status and gets a very high score from me. It might be a hot take, but I think this album surpasses Led Zeppelin 4 in terms of quality. When I think of classic rock, these songs are exactly what come to mind. The guitar playing is next level, throwing crazy riffs at you at nearly every turn. Robert Plant sounds amazing over these bluesy hard rock guitars, especially on tracks like Custard Pie and The Rover. Trampled Underfoot is probably a favorite on here for me, but what I also really admire about Physical Graffiti is its ability to slow down. Until I heard this album, I didn't really know Led Zeppelin made ballad-type music like Down by the Seaside, but they do, and it is really good. I love this album. I know it's the basic answer, but this might be my favorite Death Grips record. What used to be an album I didn't enjoy at all has turned into a record I listen to regularly at the gym or even when I'm just chilling. This was really the beginning of a new era in industrial hip hop and the solidification of Death Grips as a force to be reckoned with. I would have never thought a record this noisy could be so catchy, but it just works. The replay value of The Money Store is infinite, and nearly every song on this record is flawless. It misses a 10 rating by inches just because I don't love Fuck That much.
Last night I had a dream about you.
Even though Daft Punk perform as robots, I don't think I can consider you human if you don't like at least one or two songs off of Discovery. Is it a little cheesy? Sure, but that's the point. It's house music, it's for parties, it's for celebrating, and this album does that better than 99% of other albums within its genre. The instrumentals are futuristic and exciting. The robot voices give it a unique flair that hadn't really been done before it. Production is some of the cleanest and best you'll ever hear. Digital Love is a perfect song, One More Time is a perfect song, High Life is a perfect song. There are more on here. The only reason this is missing a 10 for me is because Superheroes and Crescendos are just a little bit repetitive. This is not one for the faint of heart. Get ready to have your soul sucked out of your body before you even listen to it. This record feels like going to church only to have the walls close in on you for eternity as your body is fed on by crows, but you can still feel everything. This record is already disturbing without context, but when you find out that many of the lyrics are about Kristen Hayter's experience with domestic and emotional abuse, it makes it all the more heavy and harrowing. If you're someone who is looking for playlist songs, this album is not for you, but if you like listening to albums for the experience, you'll agree that this is one of the rare records that sticks with you for a very long time. Television is the band I was probably least familiar with before going into this list. After a few listens though, it's pretty clear why the Melon Man gave these guys a 10. The first thing that sticks out is the guitar playing. The progressions and plucks sound beautiful together, and I'm a sucker for some good guitar. It feels like much of the indie rock from today sprung from this album, especially bands like Modest Mouse and The Strokes. Going in blind, I really enjoyed this record, and I feel a little weird giving it a 10 so fast, but I feel like it earned it. I'm so glad Stranger Things put this album back in the spotlight. Running Up That Hill is an amazing song, but you're missing out if that's all you've listened to. Kate Bush has an unnatural ability to make every one of her songs sound magical. There's not a wasted moment on Hounds of Love. When you think of other pop albums in the 80s, there's not really another one that sounds quite like this one. In fact, you can argue Kate pioneered the art pop genre as a whole. Since the strings, Kate Bush's unique voice all make Hounds of Love a It's kind of funny how infamous this album has become. While it may be associated with some not so great people, one can't deny its greatness. Who would have thought bagpipes and synths that sound like they were played on a Casio would make such a great combo? The instrumentation is just one weird aspect of this record though. When you learn this album is actually based on Jeff Mangum's dreams about Anne Frank, you realize it's even weirder. The album cover, Jeff Mangum's voice, and the story of this album have all become iconic. It almost sounds like this record was recorded during World War II and resurfaced as this relic that perfectly captures the time frame. The fact this record does such a great job making me feel that way makes me feel like it gets a well-earned 36 Chambers will forever impress me. This is a group of guys that didn't come from a lot, but that's the whole charm of the album. The mix isn't clean, the sound is rough, you can tell it came straight from the hoods of New York. And that allowed Wu-Tang Clan to create probably the rawest hip-hop record of all time. Each rapper has such a unique personality that you instantly recognize who's on every song. It's even more impressive when you learn that their plan was to create a supergroup where everyone could branch off and start their own solo careers. This is something lots of groups have tried before and to no avail, but nearly every member of Wu-Tang Clan did this easily. 36 Chambers is some of the rawest, purest hip-hop you'll ever hear, and it's another well-deserving 10. There's a reason many people now consider this the greatest album of all time. Politically charged, jazz fusion, conscious hip hop, done in a way no one's ever really done before. Thought-provoking storytelling tracks, eye-opening lyrics, raw anger and truth, all delivered at a time it needed to be delivered the most. It has beautiful moments, brutal moments, and empowering moments. There is absolutely nothing wrong with T-Pab. It's one of the most flawless records I've ever heard. I can't understate the importance of this record, and it will probably remain at the top of hip-hop lists forever. Thank you guys so much for watching. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down in the comments and show me how you would have ranked each of Fantano's 10s and how you would have rated each record. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.